Part 1. A Child Who Lived Gently. Long ago, there lived a little girl named Sarah Crew. She was quiet, but not shy. She listened carefully to the world around her, as if every small sound had something to say. Sarah lived with her father, Captain Crew, a kind man who treated her not only as a child, but as a thoughtful companion. In the evenings they sat together and talked softly. Sometimes Sarah told stories she imagined herself. She believed stories could make people feel safe, especially when the world felt new or uncertain. When the time came for Sarah to leave home and go to school, she felt the change immediately. The journey was long, the streets unfamiliar, the school tall and quiet. Still, Sarah did not complain. She stood calmly holding her father's hand, carrying with her something invisible but strong, kindness, imagination, and a gentle courage. That night, alone in her new room, Sarah closed her eyes and told herself a quiet story. And slowly, as the unfamiliar world rested, sleep came softly. Part 2. A New Place, a Quiet Beginning. The school was a large, quiet building with long hallways and tall windows. Footsteps echoed as students moved from room to room. Voices softened near closed doors. Everything felt ordered and still. Sarah walked beside her father, observing more than speaking. The woman who ran the school, Miss Minchin, watched Sarah carefully. She noticed Sarah's neat clothes, her calm manners, the way others seemed to pause when Sarah spoke. At first, Miss Minchin smiled. She spoke kindly, offered Sarah a comfortable room, and told the teachers to take special care. Sarah was given books, lessons, and quiet space to think. Other students looked at her with curiosity. Some felt admiration. Some felt distance. Sarah did not mind. She believed that everyone carried their own story, even if they did not yet know how to tell it. In the classroom, Sarah listened closely. She learned quickly, not because she hurried, but because she paid attention. When lessons grew difficult, she did not complain. She imagined herself as a traveler learning new lands, a princess learning patience and grace. At night, alone in her room, Sarah felt the weight of being far from home. Still, she did not feel lonely. She spoke softly to herself, telling small stories to fill the quiet. She reminded herself of something important, that being kind did not depend on comfort, that dignity could exist anywhere, that even in unfamiliar places, she could choose how to carry herself. And as the school grew silent, Sarah rested. Part 3. A Sudden Change. Time passed quietly at the school. Days followed one another in steady rhythm. Lessons began. Lessons ended. Evenings grew still. Sarah settled into this rhythm without effort. She wrote letters to her father, carefully choosing her words. She told him about her classes, about the books she loved, about how she imagined the school as a place in one of her stories. She believed he could feel her calm through the pages. Then, one afternoon, the air changed. Sarah was called out of class. The hallway felt longer than before, the walls quieter. Miss Minchin stood waiting. Her voice was firm, but something in it had shifted. Sarah listened. She did not cry. She did not ask many questions. Some news arrives suddenly, and the heart needs time to understand. That evening, Sarah sat alone. The familiar room no longer felt the same. The warmth she had known seemed to move farther away, like a light slowly dimming. But Sarah remained still. She folded her hands in her lap and breathed slowly. She remembered the stories she had told herself before, about brave children, about quiet strength, about dignity that could not be taken away. She told herself one more story that night, not about loss, but about endurance. And as the school fell silent, Sarah rested, holding onto calm like a small, steady flame. Part 4. Learning to be brave quietly. From that day on, Sarah's life at the school changed. Her room was no longer warm and quiet. Her clothes were simpler. Her days grew longer. She was asked to work, to clean, to carry, to help where help was needed. Sarah did not resist, not because she felt small, but because she chose to remain steady. She learned that courage does not always speak loudly. Sometimes it moves silently, one small step at a time. In the early mornings, when the school was still asleep, Sarah worked quietly. She noticed the way light entered the halls before anyone else arrived. She listened to the building wake slowly, floor by floor. Though the days were tiring, she did not allow her thoughts to harden. She spoke kindly when spoken to. She moved carefully. She held her head high, even when no one seemed to notice. At night, Sarah shared a small room with Becky, a kind girl who worked alongside her. The room was cold, but their voices were gentle. Sarah told Becky stories, not stories of riches, but stories of hope. She spoke of imaginary kingdoms, where kindness mattered more than comfort, where people were valued for how they treated others. Becky listened and smiled. In those moments, the room felt warmer. Sarah reminded herself of a promise she had made long ago, that she would be a princess not because of where she lived, but because of how she behaved. And slowly, quietly, she learned that even in the hardest places, a gentle heart can remain unchanged. As night returned to the school, Sarah lay still, holding her thoughts softly, and sleep came as it always does, to those who wait calmly. Part 5. Kindness in Small Moments. Days passed slowly, but Sarah did not count them. She learned to notice small things instead. The warmth of a cup held between her hands, the sound of footsteps fading down a hallway, the quiet relief of finishing a task before night fell. Kindness, she discovered, often appeared in the smallest moments. Sometimes, when no one was watching, Sarah shared what little she had. A piece of bread broken carefully in two, a warm word offered at the right time, a story whispered when the room felt cold and empty. She never announced these gestures. She never waited for thanks. She believed kindness worked best when it arrived quietly and left no trace behind. One evening after a long day, Sarah noticed a child shivering near the stairs. Without thinking too much, she wrapped her own thin shawl around the child's shoulders. It was not much, but the child smiled, and that was enough. At night, Sarah returned to her small room. She sat beside the window and looked at the sky. The stars seemed distant, yet steady. She remembered something her father once said, that even when everything changes, who you are inside does not have to. Holding that thought, Sarah rested. And as the school settled into silence, sleep came gently, like a quiet promise kept. Part 6. A door opens again. Winter passed quietly. The days were still cold, but the light began to linger a little longer in the mornings. Sarah continued her work as she always had, calmly, steadily, without complaint. She did not wait for change. She simply lived each day as it came. And then, slowly, something shifted. One afternoon, Sarah noticed unfamiliar footsteps in the hallway. They paused near the door, not loudly, not urgently. A quiet knock followed. Sarah looked up. She did not rush. Some moments arrive best when met calmly. What followed did not feel sudden. It felt as though a long-held breath was finally being released. Warmth returned not all at once, but gently. Sarah listened more than she spoke. She stood still, allowing the moment to settle. She understood then that the kindness she had practiced in silence had not been lost. It had simply been waiting. Later, as evening fell, Sarah sat near the window once more. The room felt different now. Not larger, not grander, just lighter. She thought of everything she had learned. That courage can be quiet. That imagination can be shelter. That dignity does not depend on comfort. Sarah smiled softly. She had never stopped being a princess. Not because of her surroundings, but because of her heart. And as the world outside grew still, she rested. The day was complete. The story had found its place, and sleep, as it always does, came gently.